Welcome to Expats Everywhere. How are you today?
I'm wonderful.
Good. Can you tell us your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself?
My name's Matt Marr. I'm from Ashland, Oregon. I have a lifelong passion for education and making the world a better place, and I'm glad to be out there doing it.
Awesome. What countries have you lived and worked in?
Well, I currently live here in Saudi Arabia. I taught in Thailand for 3 years, and before that I was an educational administrator in my hometown. I was the youngest ever school board chair, but I really wanted to get into the classroom itself, and teaching overseas gave me that opportunity.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk about Thailand. What was it like working there?
Thailand's great. A lot of people consider it not even really work. My original plan was actually to work in Korea, and we went to TEFL school on the island of Phuket and just said, why would you ever want to leave this country? We're going to be back here every vacation, so let's just stay. And it's an interesting thing. The country has a really different attitude. They very highly value teachers. You're very respected, but at the same time, the Western professional ethic hasn't really infiltrated fully, which is nice at times, but can also be frustrating if you're really trying to make any kind of systematic change.
So what are some problems that you have at school because of that?
Well, the cultural differences are really easy to underestimate because Thais always want to make everything feel really comfortable and welcoming. So at first you think, oh, this is, I'm just in America. There's KFC and McDonald's and everyone's so sweet and nice. But fundamentally, Thailand is an extremely traditional society and pretty ingrained in how it does things. They also really value appearance. So it's a country where showing up at a school can be one of the best ways to get hired. Show up with a tie on and an American passport, and you're likely to get a job within a week or two.
So is it easy to find jobs online as well, or is your best bet going there?
Definitely going there. It's a struggle sometimes to find work online. I think it's a better idea to look for people that will hire you online because it indicates they're more professional. But I know a lot of people who've felt like, oh, I can't get a job, and have gotten frustrated, and then they just got there. And I don't know anyone that's got a bachelor's degree that's sitting almost on the streets of Bangkok.
Okay. So what age group did you teach?
My first job, I taught kindergarten through 6th grade, and then I was a 6th grade homeroom teacher for 3 years.
All right, great. Did you know of anyone who taught middle school, high school, or even university there?
Mm-hmm. Well, there is no middle school in Thailand, but yes, I was good friends with a number of the high school teachers. Another example of how things are different. You ask, what grade do you teach? And they actually don't use the same words. I taught matnyom, pre-matnyom. Matnyom is the word for high school, which is pratom. And then, I know people that taught university. The universities are a little different, a little more professional and westernized.
Okay, so you said there's no middle school. What do you mean by that?
So the students start in kindergarten 3 years of kindergarten, which is called Anuban, and then 6 years of pratom, and I taught the final year of that, which would be kind of like our elementary school. So those kids are together for a really long time. It really becomes a sense of a second family. And then they have up to 6 years of matnyom, but the law only requires them to go to what we would call high school for 4 years. So the numbers drop off really fast after that, which is our grade 10 in America.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your work. What did a typical day look like?
Well, typical day. Yeah, Thailand doesn't really do typical. But you generally would join your students for the morning assembly. It's a country that really believes in doing things together as a group and cultural significance. So they would come together and do the flag raise, sing the morning songs honoring Buddhism and the king and the country. Generally, you take your class to those assemblies and then teach for a couple hours in the morning. Most positions aren't going to require you to be the full-time teacher. For example, I had a coteacher they would also teach a number of hours. And by the time the students got to 6th grade, they were getting math and science in Thai from other teachers. So I would generally teach 3 to 4 hours, and then home by 2 or 3. It's not a hard shift.
What was it like having a co-teacher?
Wonderful if you have a good relationship with them. When we were hiring new people, we would often say your relationship with your co-teacher is the single most important thing you can have. They can make your life so easy. Unfortunately, in a couple cases, it's pretty rare, but your life can also be made miserable if that relationship is poor, because they're like your lifeline. Thailand is not like European countries where everyone speaks English and they just want to get better and they want to make sure their kids learn. There are a lot of people that you will have trouble communicating with, even inside the school. So having a co-teacher that you really have a good bond with is essential to success. But it's powerful. I mean, occasionally we would engage together in lessons and really be able to create some amazing things.
So the co-teacher is always a Thai person?
Yes.
Okay. And in the classroom, do you teach with them or you split up teaching time? How does that work?
No, it's usually split, although I encourage more actual what we call co-teaching in America. And that's another example of how the terminology doesn't get used the same way, and that can sometimes be confusing for people. So yeah, generally you're the person in front of the kids. One thing you'll find in Thailand is that they want you to be in front of the kids as much as possible because it's really prestigious for the students to have an American or Western teacher. So they'll just be kind of standing you up there, and there's not really a lot of questions asked about what you're doing while you're doing that.
Okay, let's talk about money. How much can someone expect to earn in Thailand?
Money is one of the most wonderful and awful parts of working in Thailand. You are making less than American minimum wage, about maybe an average of $1,000 a month, 30,000 baht. That wage level has not gone up in 15 years now. Thailand was paying that much before as an economic crash, which is miserable if you have any debts back home, if you have large student debts, if you need to make a house payment. I do not recommend Thailand. However, if you're relatively obligation-free and you just want to be there to enjoy the culture and travel, you are living like a princeling on that money because the cost of living is very, very low. For example, our rent was about $200 a month for a really nice place. You're going to buy a new motorcycle for a little bit less than $1,000. You can get regional flights for $100, $200. Hotel rooms, $10, $15 a night.
Okay, so it's not a good country to save money, but you can live a comfortable lifestyle with what you make there?
I went to Thailand in 2011 with $5,000 in savings and left 3 years later with $2,000 in savings.
Where did that extra money go?
Well, it's not cheap to set things up. And basically, I think you could save a little bit if you could avoid ever going home. But the second that you come back to the West, you can spend several months' paychecks in one visit home. Just the ticket back to America is more than a month's pay.
Okay, so with the money that you make, what kind of lifestyle can you live? Going out, eating out, things
Absolutely.
like that?
Yeah, I know people that just dumped their monthly check into a fairly nice lifestyle. And again, as long as they didn't go back to America, they could be eating fancy food and drinking every night and be on a beach every weekend without problem.
Awesome. Okay, so if someone's thinking about going to Thailand, how much money should they have in their bank account before they get there so that they can live before their first paycheck?
Well, should they have? I think 5,000 was a good goal, and I was glad that I had it. But I've seen people show up with nothing, and yes, they struggle at first, but things are so cheap there. I had a friend who was living for her first month on the equivalent of about an American 40 cents a day. And it's actually possible, amazingly enough. I don't think you could really do that in the States anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so then what should someone pack? Like, what's the weather like?
It is always warm. The Thais claim that they have 3 seasons, and they call one of them the cool season. Uh, Only after decades of living there can I imagine that you could take that seriously. It is, from the moment you get off the plane, even if it's midnight, you will feel warm. And it never really fully backs off. Now, it does get a lot hotter for one part of the year, around New Year's, about now in April. And it gets a lot rainier in the fall. But in general, pack the minimum amount of professional clothes you can, and some stuff for swimming, and just comfortable clothes. You actually could pack almost nothing and be okay, because clothing is produced there, and you can get American name brands for a third to a quarter the price.
Okay. So someone doesn't even need to bring a big coat.
I can't imagine what you would possibly use it for. I mean, they don't really do blankets in the country, so that might be nice. Yeah.
Okay. Or how about like a light coat? Does it ever get cool or windy?
Yeah, it does get windy and rainy. Definitely rain gear is a must, and the local rain gear is not great. They just kind of throw upgraded plastic bags over themselves. So yeah, I think a raincoat. I would say the worst weather, I would say, is maybe Seattle. The worst of times, Seattle in the summer. But you're in Florida 9/10 of the year.
Okay. Can someone find a good pair of rain boots there?
Rain boots.
Is that necessary?
Is it necessary? Yeah, the rain, there's always flooding every year. Gosh, I've never seen anyone wearing rain boots. That would have been a great idea. Wish I could go back in time and get some. Generally, I needed to go to school and it was raining a lot. I would just wear flip-flops on the motorbike and get soaked and then put my dress shoes on at work. I'm not even sure if rain boots would protect you from some of these storms.
So is that more common, wearing flip-flops and just getting wet and then changing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's more common. Speaking of shoes, is it hard for someone with a big foot to find shoes?
Well, I think it'd be rude to put my massive honkers up on camera, but I had a multi-year quest to find size 13 or 14 shoes in Southeast Asia, and not just Thailand, but the Philippines, Vietnam, Laos, Malaysia, Singapore. I exhausted everywhere. I remember one time finding this pair of snakeskin boots, and they wanted like $150 for them, covered in like almost an inch of dust. Clearly no one had touched these things in a decade. So normally with Thai people, you always are bargaining. So I thought, oh, well, I don't want snakeskin boots, but gosh, they're shoes in my size. I got to take a shot here. They would not budge on the price.
Oh, interesting.
So the only pair in all of Thailand is probably still there in a gift shop in Chiang Mai if anyone wants to hit them up.
Okay, so what would be the largest size that a guy or even a woman could find?
Yeah, women also have problems. Around American 11 for men. I'm not 100% sure for women, but generally everything seems to stop about 1 or 2 sizes below the average store in America. So if you need extra, extra large, then you really should actually be bringing clothes with you. If you need size 13, you're going to be importing shoes. Anything that's kind of near the top of our lines, they just don't carry because the people are smaller.
Okay. So what other things, maybe besides clothing, you can't find there that you should throw in your suitcase and take with you?
Yeah, well, it depends on if you're living in Bangkok or not. In the city of Bangkok itself, almost every Western amenity is available if you look enough. But if you're on the countryside, there is a lot of things you will not have access to. For example, Kraft macaroni and cheese was one favorite that people would often bring back. Refried beans. Mexican food has not yet appeared outside of a couple of very sought-after specialty places. Cheese is not really part of Thai cuisine and is hard to find. But can you really pack a suitcase full of cheese? I don't think that ends well.
Someone might try.
Yeah. There's certain American spices that are a little harder to find. I brought molasses back with me. I brought apple cider vinegar back with me. the type of vitamin C I liked. Their medicine is really cheap, but if there's something really specific that you need, you might not be able to find the name brands.
Okay. So going back to clothing, what does someone wear to work?
Well, it depends on the job. The shirt I'm wearing now, for example, would be acceptable to most schools. It's not generally a long sleeve shirt and tie society. But if you want to dress up more, that's okay. The locals understand that it's really warm, especially when you first get there. So, wearing a full suit would stand out a little, but you'd get a lot of compliments also. I would say business casual would be about the general standard for the public schools.
Okay, and how about for women? Skirts, pants?
Mm-hmm. I've never worked at a school that had a written dress code before I got there. We created a couple just because appearance is so important in Thailand, but writing things down is a much lower priority, and it can create frustration for people when they first start. Mm-hmm. And skirts are good, but just nice looking clothes. The one thing they have an aversion to is looking like you're one of the tourists at the beach. You need to set yourself aside from that. So I would say, not flip-flops, no board shorts, probably leave the snorkel gear at home.
Okay, but it's hot there, so can a woman wear a top that shows her shoulders, or is that not allowed?
Shoulders are interesting. You wouldn't be allowed in Buddhist temples showing your shoulders. It's considered unmodest. It would generally be acceptable in schools, although potentially someone may have an issue with it. But generally, Thais are pretty nice about finding a polite way to talk to you if there's an issue. The only problem you run into is sometimes people just will avoid confrontation and kind of talk behind your back. Another time that your co-teacher, being your close ally, is important because you can ask them, please tell me if there's anything I'm doing that's not great, including if my dress is off. That can be a really real asset. Making friends with Thais is huge in so many ways.
Okay, let's change gears a little bit and talk about safety. Is Thailand safe?
Well, I guess that depends on your definition of the word. It's much safer to walk down the street in terms of safety from violence, crime, than in America or in most other countries. There is very low murder rate, very low rape and violent robbery. There's a moderate amount of theft, but there are two areas of concern with Thailand. The political situation is never stable. No matter how good the government looks, there's a coup coming within the next year. And there's been 19 since the republic was founded in 1932. So that generally doesn't create issues for tourists or for teachers, but occasionally it can. There was a fair bit of violence in the 70s, and there was some killing during the protests about 7 years ago. So there's that. I was actually there during a coup, and there were no issues whatsoever. So generally, I wouldn't be too worried about that. However, to get around, you're probably going to want to get on a motorbike. And that is one of the most dangerous activities I've ever done. You have to get a helmet. The Thais will tell you it's no big deal, but you really need one. I can attest to how necessary it is. I got in an accident soon after getting there. Drivers will cut you off. They're very aggressive, almost as bad as Saudi drivers, but there's this mix of vehicles that makes it even more dangerous. And Bangkok takes it to another level. I would not want to drive in that city.
Okay, so safety is more things like driving and government as opposed to everyday walking around at night.
Yeah, which, is true in America too, but we think about it differently.
Okay, so how did you meet people when you got there?
It is not hard to meet people. Are you referring to meeting Thais or Westerners?
Both.
Well, Thais are among the most friendly people on the planet. You will have people start coming up to you and testing their English out. And that will be anywhere from, hey, where are you from? I studied in Oklahoma for a year to, farang, hi. You know, it's not hard to start making friends if you are just genuine and put yourself out there. Also, most of the travelers are pretty relaxed. The traveler dynamic skews towards younger, kind of more progressive people. I've never had an issue making connections in Thailand. As a matter of fact, some of my best friends are Thais that are still there.
Okay, so you mentioned people speaking English to you. So if you go there, for the most part, you can get by with only knowing English and be fine?
Yeah, again, this is a real Bangkok countryside distinction. In Bangkok, absolutely, you're going to be fine. In the beaches, you're going to be fine. I mean, their whole livelihood's based on English speakers. But as you get deeper into the countryside, potentially it can be a struggle. Thai, I find to be somewhat of an easy language to initially learn. It's almost impossible to master. But I still have some basic phrases, and just throwing a little bit in can sometimes draw a level of communication out that's really powerful. I find Thais pretty easy to communicate with. They want to talk to you. It's not like going to France or America, heaven forbid, where people are going to maybe be somewhat judgmental or anything.
Okay, great. What kinds of things did you do for fun?
I mean, the country is designed as a playground for Westerners. Personally, I didn't take advantage of most of it because it just wasn't my speed. I loved the islands further south and on the east side. I liked swimming. I liked getting to know locals. I loved going to local markets and buying food and cooking local food. But if your interests go in the more Las Vegas direction, then there's whole cities designed just for you. Pattaya's, great for the debauchery of the planet.
Okay, so Thailand has a little bit of something for everyone?
Yeah, a little bit. It has a lot of something for everyone.
All right, great. So do you think that Thailand is a good travel hub to get to different countries?
Oh, it's one of the best travel hubs, right up there with Singapore and maybe Frankfurt, in terms of getting around its region. There's a number of discount airlines that go out of Suvarnabhumi, including Bangkok Air, one of the nicest discount airlines in the world. And you can get really cheap flights into Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, and you also can take the train to the border and then bus into those countries. Yeah, Bangkok is, if you're going anywhere in Southeast Asia, you're pretty likely to end up going through Bangkok anyway.
Okay, great. So overall, what would you say are pros and cons of living in Thailand?
Well, I mean, to anyone who's been to Thailand, the pros are you're in Thailand, and you don't have to go home. The most expensive part of the whole trip is the flight. And at that point, you might as well just stay an extra couple months if you can get the time off whatever you were doing at home. Beautiful beaches, friendly people, low cost of living, and a really beautiful culture. I would say the cons are that it's not a great place to advance professionally, the low pay, and that there can be cultural struggles when you come back.
All right, Matt, thank you so much for telling us about Thailand today.
It's been great to be here. See you on the beach.